Good day. Welcome to our short video presentation on the topic of employee recruitment, psychological contracts, and voluntary turnover, implications for employee outcomes. The presentation was developed and designed by our group consisting of Afia Wael, Daniela Jogi, Omabiksi Barrow, Tiffany Mohanlal, Sivan Ramkisoon, and Vanessa Lopez, and myself, Adita Ragbir. In terms of the content and learning objectives, we expect that at the end of this presentation, you will be able to explain the importance of the subject, define some of the key terms and concepts that underlie this area, describe the key research findings regarding the subject, identify the gaps and opportunities for future research in this area, and discuss some of the managerial implications and applications of our findings to practitioners in the field of human resource management. So, based on our outline, we are going to start by explaining why it is important to study the relationship between recruitment, psychological contracts, and employee outcomes. We have identified 4 reasons why this study is important. The first reason is that to attract the right employees to the organization, recruiters advertently or inadvertently convey certain expectations to potential employees. As a psychological contract, Rousseau 1995. The fulfillment or otherwise of these expectations has an impact on job satisfaction that can either lead to a positive outcome, for example, employee engagement, or a negative outcome, such as a voluntary exit from the firm. In addition, studies have shown that there is a clear relationship between violation of the psychological contract and reduced job satisfaction that leads to voluntary exit of such employees. Rasmussen, 2020. Also, studying this relationship is important because psychological contracts can be used to increase organizational commitment and effective commitment, which in turn leads to retention, improved performance, and other positive outcomes. Thirdly, studying this relationship would support the theories that seek to explain why employees are dissatisfied and may choose to voluntarily exit the organization. On a practical level, the outcomes of such studies would provide valuable insights for practitioners to improve their recruitment approaches and communication to increase the retention of the desired employees in the organization. Finally, further research in this area explores a variety of moderating contexts. For instance, gender, size of the organization, industry, geography, culture, and much more will be valuable. Such studies will investigate how these moderating factors affect the creation of psychological contracts and the employee outcomes that arise when psychological contracts are breached in specific contexts and situations. Remember, this study is important because psychological contracts create expectations at the recruitment stage that affect employee outcomes. In addition, psychological contracts could lead to positive or negative outcomes which are important to the organization. So now, to help you further understand this relationship, we will now define some key concepts that are relevant to this study.
Before we explore the subject matter in more detail, it is important for us to highlight some of the key concepts and definitions that will enrich your understanding of the discussions. There are many definitions from various scholars on these concepts, so we'll propose just one definition of each of the core concepts, starting with human resources management, which is the process of acquiring, training, appraising, and compensating employees, health and safety, and fairness concerns. Recruitment, according to Rasmussen, is the process of identifying and attracting a high-quality pool of applicants for a job. The goal of recruitment is to attract the right people. Hiring managers communicate to prospective employees through the job adverts, interviews, and employer. The next important concept is psychological contracts, which according to Rousseau is an individual's belief regarding the terms and conditions of a reciprocal exchange agreement between an employee and the organization. Voluntary turnover is another concept that features in this study, and it is a deliberate job dissatisfaction initiated process that includes job search and subsequent expected utility deliberations. Finally, but not exhaustively, turnover intention, as defined by Root, is a mental decision prevailing between an individual's approach with reference to work to continue or leave their work. Empirical evidence highlights that the turnover intention does correlate with actual turnover. Armed with the definitions of these key concepts, we can now proceed to discuss the key findings on this subject.
Significant studies have been conducted in this area, with a mixture of importance and evolution being placed on the topic by many researchers. In our findings, we found that there was a significant positive influence of psychological contracts and psychological empowerment on employee engagement. Psychological contracts had a significant relationship between affective commitment and organizational citizenship behavior (OCB). It was found that formal exchanges between managers and employees can increase the satisfaction and performance levels of employees. For example, in pharmaceutical companies, it was a positive mediator in the relationship between OCB and talent management. Moreover, organizational behavior factors such as psychological contracts, employee empowerment, and employee engagement influence turnover retention. The perceived job alternatives and level of job satisfaction an employee has would indicate whether he or she would exit or remain within the organization based on past research conducted. Based on the literature, a positive relationship exists between turnover intentions and employee engagement. That is, a highly engaged employee is less likely to exit the organization, reducing turnover while increasing productivity. Similarly, it is the opposite for employees with lower engagement levels. A higher employee engagement means that the likelihood that an employee would experience positive work attitudes, increased job satisfaction, and organizational commitment. However, when employees perceive a psychological contract breach, it results in low work engagement and then results in higher turnover intentions. Ramusen highlighted this in the IT industry, where in the recruitment stages, there was inaccuracy about the organization, specific job tasks, and expectations. Recruiters were using industry buzzwords to speak about their visions and plans despite the differences in their reality. Retention communication was termed to be the issue as organizations faced the dilemma of over or under delivering their expectations, which would, in the long run, diminish employee satisfaction, forcing them to seek alternative employment. This is in line with the attraction, selection, attrition model Snyder 1987, which describes where candidates are drawn and selected by the firm, given that both parties perceive that they would be a good fit to fit within the corporate culture and values. When the employee is hired and enters the organization, he or she would go through the phases where from the honeymoon stage, they would become aware of whether the organizational culture and values are not what best suits them, or they were led to believe.
Regarding possible research gaps that can be filled, future research can take into consideration the impact of personalities, the Big Five, on how employees react to violations in psychological contracts. Are conscientious employees going to react differently from employees who are more agreeable? Psychological contracts can be implemented as a mental assurance that the employer is respecting the deal between themselves and the employee. Moreover, it is encompassed with the employee's sense of fairness and trust. Moving on to the second gap that literature can be added is a broader topic of the long-term effect and why, for example, do some people stay on in organizations even when there are clear breaches in the psychological contracts created during recruitment. It will also be interesting to evaluate the long-term evolution of psychological contracts. Do they remain the same, or do they change and evolve during the employee relationship? Another area of potential research will be to explore generational differences. Do employees from different generations respond differently to psychological contract violations? There may be contrasting implications between younger and older generations around the validity of psychological contracts and may react differently to breaches of these contracts. Another important area of future research will be to explore the impact of psychological contract violation in different countries with different cultural contexts. For example, collectivism in Asia and individualism in America. Will psychological contract breaches lead to the same impact across cultures? Different cultures have different norms and values they respect highly and may not respond pleasingly to breaches of psychological contracts. The final gap that researchers can explore is the effect of social normalization. That is, if everyone in the organization already is so used to these breaches in psychological contracts, will it make a difference? Social normalization is a process where a new social norm is established. In some cases, it might take place by destroying the old normal acts of the society, whereas in some cases it might just generate a new pattern of behavior, which is in general accepted by the society. If there's a repetitive act of breaching these contracts, its integrity would be questioned and would be overlooked in the future as a flawed method, which in turn could lead to an increase in employee retention. By filling these research gaps, employers can become more knowledgeable in the future of the reputability of psychological contracts and how it can influence the hiring of employees, the reduction of employee retention, and the bolstering of employee engagement.
Based on the findings of our study, we are able to provide the following non-exhaustive recommendations for organizations and managers. First, recruiters should be careful about the promises and expectations that they create in the process of trying to attract employees. They should seek to under-promise and over-deliver rather than over-promise and under-deliver at the recruitment stage. In addition, organizations should invest in robust induction programs that strengthen the alignment between the new employees and their organizations. Then, to create the ongoing honeymoon effect with new employees, managers may want to pay attention to employee mentoring and pay attention to motivators that employees have through employee engagement surveys. To deal with some of the shocks, whether they may be personal or organizational, that employees face, organizations should invest in counseling, such as employee assistance programs. Also, organizations should keep the channels of communication open and continuously measure how the expectations of new employees are being met. Finally, talent management initiatives to retain the best employees should include ongoing conversations between managers and key talent on the psychological contracts created. This video presentation has explained the importance of research into the relationship between recruitment practices, psychological contracts, and employee outcomes. We have provided definitions of the key concepts to improve your understanding. We have discussed the key findings from scholarly work in this area, evaluated the research gaps that exist, and recommended some actions for managers and organizations to take based on the research.
If you would like to do more research and get some additional reading on this topic, please check out our references on the screen. This was used to prepare our presentation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation. We hope you enjoyed our video, and if you have any questions, feel free to approach us at any point in time. Thank you once more.